everybody, this is Troy Full, Pinnacle Investments and the Propelio Academy, and I want to welcome you back to session number 2 here. And as I mentioned in session number 1, we're going to talk about more of the best practices in these 4 components to every single real estate note deal that you do. Now, as I mentioned, interest rates, you want to keep your interest rates between 7 and 9%. Why? Because you're not Bank of America, and neither am I. Just straight up. And I say that because you'd be shocked how many times people will send me a note to purchase and the interest rate's written at 2%, 3%, 4%. I've even purchased notes at 0% interest. 0% interest. Now imagine the discount on that note at 0% interest. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. There's no doubt about it. But there's nothing I can do about it because, as I mentioned in the last episode, once you put the wheels in motion, it's really hard to, bring buyers back to the table, especially on a 0% interest loan. So if you're selling, and when you're selling your houses to owner-occupied, SFR, owner-occupied, you want to keep your interest rate between 7 and 9%. The other reason you want to do this is that 9% is that safe space with Dodd-Frank. And we're going to get into Dodd-Frank here in a little bit. We're not going to cover that in this session, but I will definitely cover that in one of the future sessions. But you want to keep between 7 and 9%. Second thing you want to make sure is the down payment. Okay? Now, let's just be real honest here. We all had bikes when we were kids, or skateboards, or scooters, or basketballs, or whatever it was that was our quote-unquote favorite thing to do. And our parents probably bought it for us when we were, for a birthday present, or for a Christmas gift, or whatever it was. The first bike we ever had, or skateboard, or scooter, we probably didn't take very good care of it. Why? Because we didn't pay for it. Really simple. But the second bike, and our parents might have bought us a second bike, but we didn't take very good care of that. So our parents said, you know what, we're not buying you no more bikes. You don't take care of it, we're not spending our money on it. So now we got to go buy a bike. So we go out, we earn our money, we buy our bike. Guess what that bike's being? It's being kept in our bedroom, it's being garage kept, it's being maintained, the chain's being oiled. If it gets a flat tire, it's fixed that day. All of those things are going into play when we spend our own money. Well, guess what happens? When you take somebody's 10% down on a house, guess what? You're taking their hard-earned money. And that hard-earned money has a psychological effect to the fact that these people they've got skin in the game. They're investing with you. Okay, they're investing in that property. Now, why do I say that? Why is this so important? Here's why. I see bandit signs all over the country as I travel and speak on this topic matter. And you know what the bandit signs say? Real simple, real simple. No credit check. No down payment. 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for sale. And I'm thinking to myself, what are we doing here? You're attracting the wrong buyer from day one just based on the poor marketing strategy that's being used. Now, I know that there's somebody out there teaching that strategy, and it's all about getting that borrower in and getting them in the house and lease purchasing it and this and that, and cash flowing it. Guess what? I don't want to play that game. I don't want to be involved in that area. Not because there's anything necessarily technically wrong with it or illegal or immoral about it. I'm not going to get into that side of it. But at the same time, I want to make sure that that buyer, whoever that buyer is, has got skin in the game. Why? Because when they hit a season of life, what I would call maybe a tough spot or a tough patch, they're going to think twice about not paying me. They're going to think twice about not paying you. I would say that's probably a safe bet for all of us. If we've invested in something and money's a little tight 1 month, or maybe it's a little tight 2 months in a row, maybe it's a little tight even 3 months in a row, we're going to make sure that whatever we have money invested in, that we keep those payments up. We may have to go a little skinny on the dinner, on the dinners out and on the theaters and everything else, but those things are still going to get paid. That's the kind of thought process that we want going on. Now, if they bring in more, that's a great thing. Why is that a great thing? Because now they got more skin in the game, okay? But in the event that you go to sell the note, it's less that you have to take a discount on in the future. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. So you want to always keep that in mind. And I say that because I've had people bring me notes and they're like, hey, Troy, I sold it to this guy, got 10% down. You know, he had 20%, but you only said 10, so that's all I got. And I explained to him, like, well, that other 10% that you didn't get is now money that you're going to take a discount on selling me this note. So if a buyer comes to the table, which you're going to come across this, and they've got more than 10% to put down, then by all means, take their money. Okay, that's less money that you have to take a discount on. Now the flip side of that coin, maybe you got a buyer that doesn't have 10% down. Maybe they only got 5% to put down. But maybe they've got really good credit. Maybe they got like 720, 740, 750 credit. Okay, you can still do a deal like that because the higher credit is going to, how to say, balance it out. They've already proven to you and all of their other creditors that they are a responsible party. They are a responsible party. Okay, so you may come across that. Would I still sell to a person with a 700 or better credit score? Yeah, if they only have 5% to put down, I would probably still do that deal. But I would make sure that their credit report is spotless across the board, okay? So, but also keep in mind, you're seller financing more money, which means you're going to take a more discount on it, and we'll talk about that later. Terms, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I've seen deals at 22 years. I've seen deals at 17 years. I've seen deals at 11 years. My whole point in sharing that with you is that you want to make sure that this here and this here, meaning the interest rate and the terms, are number one, they're affordable. Okay? Number one, they're affordable. So having somebody who had a 9% interest rate on a 10-year term in that type of a payment may not be affordable for a buyer. So let's, hypothetically speaking, let's say you find a buyer and that buyer has $3,000 a month earned income, but they're buying your house and on 7% at 30 years, their payment is $750 a month. But 9% at 10 years, it's $1,400 a month. So now all of a sudden you have a buyer that's stretched to the max. That buyer is going to be, how do you say, running on really thin margins at the end of the day. And he or she or they are most likely going to default on that loan. Now, why is that? Because they went in with the idea of, hey, we can afford $1,500 a month or $1,400 a month, no problem. And they may be really positive about it and they may think, hey, this is easy peasy, we can make this happen. But you as an investor, you as a person who's originating that loan, have to sometimes do the thinking for them. And you have to look at their financial situation. And you never want to put somebody in a financial situation, say in that case, $3,000 a month income, paying $1,400, $1,500 a month in just a mortgage payment. In just a mortgage payment. That's almost 50%, 50% of their overall income. Now, by the time you add in taxes and insurance, because the majority of seller finance deals are done without escrows, okay, without escrows. Majority of them are done with just principal and interest as a whole. And by the way, being so I brought up this subject, I'm going to touch on it a little bit further. Stay away from doing interest-only loans on single-family owner-occupied properties. Okay, and I'll talk about single-family non-owner-occupied properties, which are investor properties, in another session. But stay away from doing interest-only loans on single-family non-owner-occupied properties. Why? Here's the number one reason why. When somebody's making a payment every single month and their principal balance is not being reduced, psychologically, they lose hope. Okay, psychologically, they figure out one day that they're just spinning their wheels. And there's not a person out there that enjoys spinning their wheels on any type of topic matter, yet alone making mortgage payments as a whole. So never do an interest only. Now, I'm not saying it's illegal, and I'm not saying you can't do it, and I'm not saying you can't sell it. But to set up a what I would call best practices deal, you want to do a P&I payment on it as a whole. So back to my hypothetical here. Doing a deal where a person's making $3,000 a month and they've got $1,400 a month payment to you. Now you got to add taxes. Now you got to have property insurance. Now you got to add property upkeep, like utilities, gas, electric, water. Now you got food. Now you got health insurance. Now you got automobile payments. Now you got gasoline for the automobile. And you might even have automobile repairs. You might have school, lunches, things like that. All of that stuff adds up. And, that's pretty commonplace for most Americans. So if you're listening to this and those things are real for you, chances are those things are real for your clients as well. And I love the fact that people get excited about home ownership. I love the fact that seller financing or private notes can be used to create home ownership. But there's also a fiduciary responsibility of setting it up so that the borrower can make their payments in a timely fashion. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that here in just a moment. So 10, 15, 20 years. Credit. Now this is my number one, oh goodness. This is my number one pet peeve in the business. And I say this because I've been doing this for like 23 years. And I can't tell you the number of times people bring me note deals, and they bring me a note deal and I'm like, did you pull credit on the borrower when you lent them the money or when you did the note deal? And I would say that 99.999% of the people say no. And I'm like, why not? Well, I didn't have a way to pull credit. I didn't think it was that important. The house is just, 5 blocks away from where I live. The borrower, is, their son is on my son's soccer team. We play golf together. We go to church together, whatever it may be. They just took it at face value. And although I understand their rationale that when you go into a financial agreement, which is what a note is, you want to make sure that you're covering all of your bases. And pulling a borrower's credit is imperative. Now, if you're listening to this, you're like, hey, Troy, I don't have a way to pull credit. No problem. We're going to talk about that in one of the up-and-coming sessions as well. But here's an easy fix for that. That is, have the borrower go to like freecreditreport.com or Credit Karma or myfico.com, any of those websites. Some of them are free. Some of them are going to cost them a few bucks. And have them pull the credit, their credit, and give you a copy of it. That's the best way to handle it. Number one, they get a copy of it and you get a copy of it, so you both are looking at the same thing. But at least then you can see whether or not this borrower is making payments to other people. Now, you and I, as a perfect classic case, if I went out today to go get a new phone from a new cell phone provider, the first thing they would ask me after I picked out my new phone is, hey, Troy, can we have your social security number? Sure, no problem. Why? Because they're going to look at my credit report to see if I can afford a $500 phone and a $40 a month phone bill. Now, that seems ludicrous, but that's real for all of us. So why would you want to sell a $100,000 house or a $50,000 house or a $75,000 house and not pull their credit to understand if they have the financial capacity or if they're what I would call using best practices on themselves and making their own payments and their own, paying up on all their bills? Here's my point. If you don't do those kinds of things when you're creating notes, it sets you up for a very, very risky financial situation. And here's why I say this. Oftentimes people will use this, but Troy, I got 10% down. They put down 10% and they're nice people. Okay, I'm not saying they're not nice people. I'm a nice person and people pull my credit. Ryan's a nice person. Daryl's a nice person. We're all nice people. But still, when you're doing a financial transaction, these are the things that will come into play. So the point being is that having that is imperative and making sure it's on point. Now, with that, if you pull a person's credit and their credit is below 600, which is going to happen, I've seen credit scores down to 375. And I like to tell people, I think you get like 500 points just for breathing. But these people were below that, which means they're not paying anybody. But now they're out house hunting, and they find your house or they find your client's house. And they may have some cash. You want to know why they have cash? Because they're not paying anybody. And it's sitting there in their bank account, and they're just like stockpiling it. And then they find the next, I'm going to say victim, which is the real estate investor who just fixed up this house. They bought it on the cheap. They got their crews in there. They ran back and forth to Home Depot and Lowe's doing all of that work, getting this house fixed up. They watched HGTV for 6 days straight to find out their color palettes that they were going to put in there. And all of a sudden, here comes somebody knocking at their door going, "We love your house. Can we buy it?" And they're like, "Sweet, I got a buyer." And here comes the buyer that ain't paid anybody in the last 24 months, and they got down payment money. But the fact is, they have down payment money because they stopped paying everybody else. And guess what they're going to do to you? They're going to stop paying you too. But here's the difference. They're going to give you some down payment money. And let's just say it's 10% down on, say, a $100,000 house. So that means you got a $90,000 note. You got 10% equity in it because you sold it for $100,000. It was worth $100,000. You got 10% down, $90,000 first. But you set it up at a 9% interest rate on, say, 20 years. So the payment's about $1,000 a month, plus or minus, somewhere in there. That being the case, now all of a sudden they make a couple payments, get out of the gate, they got a dog in the hunt, they're moving down the road, but, you know, daddy loses his job again. Now all of a sudden they're not making payments to you. But then again, you don't figure that out because they've been dodging you because you're making phone calls trying to collect your money, and they keep dodging you, and all of a sudden now it goes 2 or 3 months, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to file foreclosure notice. Okay, foreclosure notice, average time frame nationwide, judicial or non-judicial, is about 6-7 months nationwide. Even in judicial states, there are a lot of judicial states that foreclosures are less than 6 months, but they don't start day one. So if your payment is due June 1st, or their payment's due June 1st, lenders don't start foreclosure on June 2nd. They don't start foreclosure till like August 1st or September 1st, you know, 60, 90 days later, because they're trying to work it out. Why are they trying to work it out? Because they know that that foreclosure cost is expensive. Really, really expensive. So you end up with a, you know, say 6 months worth of no payments, and plus the fact that they didn't pay you for a couple months in advance. So you waited 2 months to start the foreclosure. So there's 2 months plus 6, there's $8,000, plus legal fees are about $2,700 on it. But then you got taxes that are owed on it because you've now gone through another property tax cycle. And then you get the house back. When you do get it back, guess what? The carpet ain't clean anymore. The walls ain't white anymore. You know, the backyard hasn't been mowed in 9 months. The front yard hasn't been mowed in 9 months. There's a broken window because Jimmy threw a baseball through it and they didn't care to fix it. So all of those things add up. So when people say to me, "Hey, Troy, you can just foreclose on it. You can just take it back." I understand what they're saying, but I also understand the cost associated with it. So my point being is that this credit score is imperative. Okay, don't go blindly into it. Educate yourself about your borrower. Make sure that your borrower is of credit worthiness. And if they're not credit worthy, then help them become credit worthy. Hook them up with a credit repair company. There's thousands of them all over this country. Some good, some not so good. I'll leave that up to you. But at the end of the day, hook them up with a credit repair company. Okay? Help them get back on track. Okay? One I would put out there would be like FortressCreditPro.com. Rondi over there, he's a little expensive, but the guy absolutely is rock solid in cleaning up credit as a whole. My point being is that if you can help people out of the hole that they're in, because I've never really met anybody that likes not paying their bills. It can become a comfortable situation where they become comfortably numb, old Pink Floyd phrase there. But at the end of the day, they don't necessarily enjoy that. It just becomes their new norm. But if you could show them, how do you say, a higher norm by cleaning up their credit, then all of a sudden you've got a client for life. Okay, it's actually what Steve Cook and I used to do with his clients. He would bring people in, we'd help them get their credit cleaned up, and then he'd have a better client to buy his houses, and then we would buy his notes on the other side of the fence. So rate 7 to 9%, down payment 10% plus. 5 if they got super stellar credit, but I can tell you as a whole for the seller financing industry in general, I would say credit on an average is about 640, 637 as a whole in general, because you do get some high ones, you do get some low ones. Terms 10, 15, 20, 30-year terms, credit 600 plus. Now, all of that being said, the easiest way to handle this, and the way I would do this and the way we do it, is to hire an RMLO to do this for you. Okay, an RMLO is a residential mortgage loan originator. Grant's going to kill me. I can't remember the name of his old company. Texas Pride Lending. There you go, Texas Pride Lending. Here in Texas, I know there are other ones around the country that do it as well. They're like, I don't know, I've seen them as low as $300. I've seen them as high as $1,000. Trust me, it's money well spent. It eliminates all of this, or it doesn't necessarily eliminate all this. What it does is it takes all of this, it runs its ratios, it gives you a packet that you, as an investor, can now make an educated decision about it. Keep in mind, I've seen RMLOs do this work, and the borrower's got like a 480 credit score, and they still sold the house. I'm like, why did you sell the house to them on a 480 credit score? Well, because the RMLO did all the paperwork, and that's all you said they needed to do. No, they did it to give it to you so you could read it and understand it and make an educated decision. This whole thing right here is about you making an educated decision about your home buyer for your property. That's what that's about. And so the more of this you know, the better educated you are, which means the better decision you could make if you make it. You know, some people don't make the decision like, hey, this is great, paperwork's done. No, read it. So use an RMLO, they'll clean up all this stuff. If you got people below 600, I would not sell the house to this person. I would put them in a credit repair program. And here's a little trick that Steve and I used to do. So a little trick that we would do is if we found buyers that with lower credit scores, we would, because Steve had quite the machine actually back in the day, and he was constantly fixing and flipping, is he would set those people off to the side, he'd help them get their credit cleaned up, bring them back like 90 days later, and now all of a sudden he's got a built-in buyer ready to buy, not the house they originally saw, but a new house that they've now done. So you end up with future buyers by doing that. You end up building a loyalty model, which is what, how you say, is imperative to success in this business. So that being said, guys, thank you so much for spending time with me here on session number 2. We'll see you guys back on session number 3. Take care.